let's dive right into this. We're looking at the situation that exploded in early 2026, a massive conflict between Iran and Israel with the U.S. involved that has just thrown the entire Middle East into chaos. And smack in the middle of it all, India, facing what might be its toughest foreign policy challenge in a generation. That's the age-old question, isn't it? But for a rising power like India, it's just not that simple. For decades, it's been a master at balancing relationships with pretty much everyone in the Middle East. But a war like this, it changes the entire playbook. And let's be really clear here. This isn't just some distant conflict you see on the news. As we're about to see, this is a direct, right here, right now threat to India's people, its economy, and its whole vision for the future. Okay, so to really get why this is such a diplomatic tightrope walk, we need to talk about India's strategic trilemma. It's basically caught between three incredibly important and often clashing relationships that are all absolutely critical to its survival and growth. First up, you've got the modern, super deep partnership with the US and Israel. I mean, Israel is one of India's biggest defense suppliers, and together with the US, they are the key partners for the kind of high-tech stuff that's fueling India's military and economic engine. Then there's Iran. This is way more than just another country on the map. It's a civilizational neighbor, with ties going back centuries. But even more important today, it's the gateway. Through projects like the Chabahar port, India gets access to Afghanistan and Central Asia, totally bypassing its arch-rival Pakistan. That's huge. And finally, you have the Gulf monarchies. Think the UAE, Saudi Arabia. This is where millions of Indians live and work, sending billions of dollars back home to their families. Oh, and it's also where most of India's oil and gas comes from. So yeah, their stability is literally India's stability. So how in the world has India managed this impossible juggling act? Well, for years, the answer has been a policy called strategic autonomy. Now, this isn't the old-school non-alignment from the Cold War, just kind of staying out of everything. No, this is about actively engaging with everybody so you can make decisions based purely on what's best for India. But that very idea is now being tested like never before. And a lot of critics are saying that recent events show a pretty clear tilt to one side. Okay, now, check out the timeline on this slide, because the sequence and the signaling are everything. You have Prime Minister Modi visiting Israel just 48 hours before the strikes. Then come the calls to leaders in the UAE and Israel, but not to Tehran. And then official silence on the strikes and the killing of Iran's supreme leader. It's this exact sequence of events that critics are pointing to as proof of a major shift. And as you can probably guess, this lit an absolute political firestorm back in India. The opposition, led by figures like Sonia Gandhi, basically framed the government's moves not as smart neutrality, but as a complete abandonment of its principles, a betrayal of a longtime partner like Iran. But the government, well, they see it completely differently. They're defending their approach as responsible diplomacy. Their argument is pretty straightforward. When a crisis is this explosive, the number one priority has to be calming things down and protecting Indian lives and interests, not making grand statements based on selective outrage. And those interests we just mentioned are massive. I mean, let's step away from the high-level diplomatic chess for a moment, because this conflict poses a very real, very immediate threat to the Indian economy and, most importantly, to millions of its people. Just look at that number, 8.9 million. Think about that. That's not just a statistic, that's nearly the population of a major global city. Millions of Indian citizens are now right in the line of fire. It's a potential consular crisis of staggering proportions. And this chart just drives home their economic power. Last year, India brought in a record-breaking $135 billion in remittances from its citizens abroad. A huge chunk of that, 38%, came from right there in the Gulf. This isn't just extra cash. It's a lifeline for countless families and a fundamental pillar of India's entire economy. At the exact same time, this conflict has put a stranglehold on what you could call India's energy jugular. Something like 70% of all the oil India imports has to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, which is now basically a war zone. That's a massive vulnerability that could grind the whole country's economy to a halt. Now, this crisis isn't just threatening the present. It's actually putting India's entire future at risk. It's got two giant strategic projects hanging in the balance. And these aren't just about trade routes. They represent two totally different visions for what India wants to be on the world stage. First, there's the Chabahar port in Iran. This is a project India has poured money and a decade of effort into. It's up and running, and it's India's one and only reliable way to get to the markets and resources of Central Asia without having to go through Pakistan. And then you have this other super ambitious idea, the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. This was a huge announcement. The plan is to create a kind of modern-day spice route, a web of ports and railways connecting India all the way to Europe. And a key part of it? It's seen as a Western-backed counter to China's big Belt and Road project, with partners like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the EU. This table just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, Shah Bahar is all about a Eurasian strategy, working with Iran and Russia. On the other side, IMEC is about integrating with the West, working with the US, the EU, and the Gulf states. Both are vital, and both are now incredibly vulnerable because of the very same conflict.
So the harsh reality for India today is that it's in real danger of losing both. Its concrete operational asset, Chabahar, is basically under siege because of the war. And its ambitious dream for the future, IMEC, is in serious doubt because the regional stability it absolutely depends on has just been blown apart. So where does all this leave India? Look, this crisis is about so much more than just getting through a tough time. It's about defining its future role in a world that is changing at lightning speed.
At the end of the day, pretty much all analysts are calling this a defining test. How India manages to navigate these treacherous waters, protecting its people, securing its economy, trying to save its big strategic projects, that's what's going to set the course for its foreign policy and its status as a global power for decades to come. Which really leaves us with one final and pretty tough question to think about. In a world that's becoming more and more polarized, a world full of hard choices, is being able to stay truly neutral, to be friends with everybody, a luxury that a rising power like India just can't afford anymore?
AI News Decoder, the AI take. Subscribe for more.